Buenos días, bienvenidos y bienvenidas al evento del lanzamiento del panorama.
Good morning and welcome to the launch event of the 2022 Regional Overview of Food Security and Nutrition in Latin America and the Caribbean. We would like to thank the government authorities from the region, as well as representatives from academia, the private sector, and civil society for joining us here today. Moreover, we would like to welcome the Latin American and Caribbean media outlets that have taken the time to attend this launch and press conference. We would also like to invite the media outlets to please post their questions in the Zoom chat. The Regional Overview is the main publication addressing food situation in the region, and on a yearly basis, it refers to the state of food security and nutrition and the policies that contribute to eradicating hunger and malnutrition in all of its forms. The 2022 edition refers to the key link between food prices, diet quality, food security, and nutrition. It also provides us with some observations as to how the lack of economic access to a healthy diet is related to different forms of malnutrition, such as hunger, stunting, and overweight in children under 5 years of age, as well as anemia in women aged 15 to 49. The Regional Overview is a joint publication of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, FAO, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, the Pan American Health Organization, the World Health Organization, PAHO, WHO, the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, and the United Nations World Food Program, WFP. So we would like to greet and welcome the directors who will be presiding over this activity. To wit, Mr. Mario Lubetkin, FAO Assistant Director General and FAO Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, Ms. Rosana Palastri, the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, Ms. Lola Castro, the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, UN World Food Program, Mr. Gary Coniel, the UNICEF Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, and Dr. Marcos Espinal, the Deputy Director of the Pan American Health Organization. We would also like to greet the members of the report's Technical and Monitoring Committee, Isabel de la Peña, Program Officer of the IFAD for the Latin American and Caribbean Division, Carla Mejia, Regional Nutrition Advisor of the World Food Program, Leo Netherben, Technical Advisor, Nutrition and Physical Activity Advisor of the Pan American Health Organization, and Paula Baylis, a nutrition specialist from UNICEF for Latin America and the Caribbean. We would again like to thank the participants who are joining us here today on this live streamed event. The 2022 overview main theme refers to an analysis of the food security and nutrition situation in the region and provides some measures and response actions to move towards better affordability of healthy diets. Now, this shows how states and other actors in the agri-food system are actually able to develop certain actions to improve people's ability to afford purchasing and consuming nutritious foods, such as animal and vegetable proteins, fruits and vegetables, which of course are very important for people's food and nutrition security and their development. Now let's learn a bit more about this publication. To do so, we would like to invite you to gain access to our FAO America's website while also.
Desde el 2014, el hambre y la inseguridad alimentaria han aumentado en América Latina y el Caribe, superando el promedio mundial. El número de personas que sufren hambre creció de 43.3 millones a 56.5 millones entre el 2019 y el 2021, un incremento del 30%. Además, el 40.6% de la población enfrentó inseguridad alimentaria moderada o grave. Esto quiere decir que no tuvieron un acceso continuo a alimentos o pasaron al menos un día sin comer. Al mismo tiempo, casi 1 de cada 4 adultos sufre obesidad y 3.9 millones de niños y niñas de hasta 5 años padecen sobrepeso. Estos datos evidencian un problema estructural agravado por una serie de crisis sucesivas que han generado un aumento de los precios de los alimentos y los fertilizantes, perjudicando la asequibilidad a las dietas saludables. Por ello, se requiere transformar los sistemas agroalimentarios para que sean más eficientes, inclusivos, resilientes y sostenibles. Según el Panorama de la Seguridad Alimentaria y Nutricional en América Latina y el Caribe 2022, 131 millones de personas no pueden acceder a una dieta saludable. La región tiene el costo más elevado en comparación con el resto del mundo, con un valor de $3.89 por persona al día, mientras que la media mundial registra un valor de $3.54. Las políticas de apoyo a la alimentación y la agricultura son una prioridad, a fin de garantizar el acceso físico y económico a alimentos nutritivos y responder de manera integral a las necesidades de productores y productoras, del comercio y los mercados de alimentos y de los consumidores y consumidoras. Se necesita especialmente políticas que mejoren la disponibilidad y asequibilidad de alimentos nutritivos para las personas más vulnerables, las mujeres que sufren mayor inseguridad alimentaria que los hombres y los hogares de bajos ingresos que gastan una mayor proporción de su presupuesto en alimentos. El Panorama de la Seguridad Alimentaria y Nutricional en América Latina y el Caribe 2022, elaborado por 5 agencias de Naciones Unidas, propone una serie de políticas para contribuir a la disponibilidad y asequibilidad de dietas saludables y prevenir el hambre y la malnutrición. Programas de apoyo a productores a pequeña escala y agricultores y agricultoras familiares para la diversificación y producción de alimentos nutritivos y su vinculación con los sistemas de compras públicas. Acciones para facilitar la comercialización y la transparencia de los mercados que incluyan un permanente acceso e intercambio de información, el monitoreo de los precios y el uso de plataformas digitales. Medidas para el fortalecimiento de sistemas de protección social sensibles a la nutrición, como los programas de alimentación escolar que incluyen menús adecuados y la participación comunitaria, y que fomenten el consumo de dietas saludables a través de leyes sobre etiquetado de alimentos y políticas fiscales para reducir el consumo de alimentos altamente procesados. Erradicar el hambre y la malnutrición en todas sus formas será posible con la participación de todos los actores del sistema agroalimentario. Juntos podemos garantizar el derecho a la alimentación adecuada para todos y todas, sin dejar a nadie atrás.
Con esta introducción, a continuación,
This brief introduction, we would now like to move on to hearing some brief presentations from the directors of the 5 UN agencies joining us today. They will refer to the primary data and results of the publication. We would also remind the participating media outlets again that they can post their questions in the chat room, in the chat enabled in the Zoom room, and then we will address these at a later date. To begin this first round of remarks by the agencies taking part in this report, I would like to invite Mr. Mario Lubetkin to take the floor, the Assistant Director General and Regional Representative of FAO. Thank you, Daniela, distinguished authorities from Latin America and the Caribbean joining us here today. Most of the 33 capitals with which we work are joining us here today. And these are representative of members of the GRULAC and the UN agency, the UN bodies in Rome as well. Joining us today, we have representatives here from international organizations, academia, civil society, and the private sector as well joining us at this launch. We have colleagues from the UN system and partners as well in this significant effort. Partners from IFAD, the WFP, PAHO, UNICEF. We have all worked together. Dear colleagues and friends from the media outlets also joining us virtually here today from throughout the entire region. Clearly, you have a significant responsibility with regard to the impact of this report. Now, colleagues present here as well have worked on this program, members from FAO who are present here today, and members from the other partner agencies as well in this impressive endeavor. Thank you so much for your interest and participation in such an important launching event. Now, Latin America and the Caribbean are going through a significant, unprecedented situation with regard to food insecurity, and the situation is not at all promising. The region has suffered from the impact of a series of crises that have had an impact on malnutrition and hunger across the board. The inequality in the region affected by COVID-19, climate change, and a serious economic crisis have also added to this negative situation. It is something that is of great concern. Now, in addition to all of this, we have seen the constantly raising of food prices, further aggravated by the situation in Ukraine. And we have also seen rising fertilizer prices as well. Now, we must not ignore the situation addressing hunger in the region. We also know that there's significant income inequality in the region. We know that a large number of individuals, 56.5 million individuals in the region, live in poverty. From 2015 to 2021, food security in the region increased by practically 100 million individuals, and those now we have from 43.2 million individuals to 56.5 million individuals suffering from hunger. This rate increased. Now, this is quite a paradox because our region produces food for a large number of individuals. It's a very challenging context. We have limited resources, but a responsibility to come up with tangible, sustainable solutions and to be more effective and efficient with regard to our public and private investments so that we can do away with food insecurity for the region. Now, thanks to this publication, the regional overview of food security and nutrition in the region, we have carried out a significant assessment on food quality and nutrition. We have addressed three key challenges in the region. First of all, we have seen a rise in the figures relative to hunger and nutrition and food security, and our region, when compared to other regions, is not doing quite well with regard to inflation. And we've also seen sustained constant increase of obesity and overweight situation. Now, we have seen a wealth of recommendations to move toward more affordable, healthy diets to secure food and nutrition security in the region. Figures show that the lower income individuals spend more than half of their income on food, and the poor people, in fact, will continue to be more impacted by these food price increases. Now, because they will see an impact on the quality and quantity of their food. Now, in our region, we have the highest cost of healthy diets when compared to other regions throughout the world. Now, this places a significant burden on individuals. 1 out of every 5 people do not have access to healthy diets. We understand that food, the individual's nutrition and diet really depends on a series of factors that are assessed under this report. The country's needs and realities are different as well. Therefore, we need to come up with tailored solutions. Now, this report refers to how policies aimed at reducing the cost of healthy diets may actually contribute to food security of the individuals in our region and be more effective when they include the agri-food approach that includes production, trade, the environment, market, and appropriate consumption. Now, diversifying nutritious food production is a key component of ensuring that individuals have affordable access to healthy diets. Everyone, that is, specifically those individuals concerned with production. Producing more diverse food products can actually boost the income of family farmers and at the same time foster shorter consumption, shorter production chains. This will also securing the transparency of information and market prices and making the regional agri-food commerce more open to others may secure greater access to healthy diets and affordable healthy diets. Now, finally, access to healthy diets throughout the region to the most marginalized individuals should include a variety of different species. For example, we have the the school feeding program. We have grants as well and other components. Now, we are aware of the efforts taken by the governments to meet the current crisis. We know that the variety of different climate-related, productive, and trade-related challenges lie therein. Now, we have launched a variety of different activities in different areas to support the governments with regard to their policy and program design so that they can make sure that they will have a positive impact on individuals' food security and nutrition. In April of 2022, during our regional conference held in Quito, we discussed jointly with the 33 member countries different avenues to secure concrete actions to address this situation. And this is something that we will be addressing further in the first quarter of 2024 in Georgetown. Now, also in coordination with the CELAC pro tempore presidency in December of 2022, we also co-organized a meeting with a variety of different ministers and vice ministers in the realm of agriculture to address food insecurity and hunger. Now, in this regard, and bearing in mind the major dramatic changes we have faced in recent years and the necessary actions to meet the targets under the 2030 agenda, FAO has also expressed its willingness to provide technical assistance to make sure that the food security and nutrition plan of CELAC is updated. This is San CELAC plan, and this was adopted in 2015. But we know that given the major changes the world has faced, this calls for updating. Now, above and beyond addressing food insecurity and hunger, we know that we need to address other crises, and the region has faced major setbacks, which have had an impact on the sustainable development of the countries with regard to economic, social, and environmental aspects. The complexity and scope of the policies required calls for integration by the countries through inclusive processes that are multilateral as well, multi-sectoral, and that would also ensure the participation of all stakeholders in the agri-food system. It's simply not an option to have individuals facing hunger and food insecurity. We will continue to work together, as we have done thus far, to ensure adequate diets in our region. And we truly hope that this report will be a contribution to that end. Thank you.
We thank him for his intervention, which presents the relevance of addressing the food security situation facing the region today. We now invite Ms. Rosana Polastri, Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of the FIDA, for her presentation. Thank you very much. Dear Mario, colleague of FAO, dear Lola from the World Food Program, and we are working together for food security through different activities. Distinguished members of Marcos from the PAHO and in the new role of UNICEF, and it is very nice to meet you through this area, dear authorities of Latin America and the Caribbean that are following us in this event today, dear professionals of the media that are here with us today. From IFAD, we're very happy to have participated in this regional review of food security and nutrition for Latin America and the Caribbean in 2022, together with FAO, with PAHO, WHO, UNICEF. And again, there is an empowerment of the numbers of hunger and food security in the region. Another year that numbers that are showing that we're far from reaching the SDGs, especially the SDGs to Hunger Zero. As Mario already mentioned, the paradox here is that this is happening in a region that, due to the richness of the natural resources, is an exporter to the rest of the world, and the contribution to food security is very important. The overview this year is focused in cost and the access to a healthy diet. Latin America has an alarming first place of the regions in the world with a very bad diet. We have to remember that this is affecting the most vulnerable populations, small farmers, rural women, and indigenous people, as well as Afro descendants, who are always considering more resources to purchasing this food. And the paradox is that it is happening in a region that is tremendously wealthy in natural resources. To revert this or turn it around means a transformation of the food systems so that they become sustainable and inclusive and allow all people to have quality feeding system. I would like to highlight the key elements that we need to consider for the transformation of the food systems, making an emphasis in investment, which is our main focus in the investment in IFAD. Hunger and food security are all related to poverty and inequality. Therefore, it affects very badly the vulnerable situations. It is crucial to invest in programs that have inclusion in their mind and focused in those populations that are lagging behind: rural populations, women, children, indigenous, and Afro descendants. Second, gender gap is very important. Again, this year, the food insecurity is far more important in women and far more in this region compared to the rest of the world. So it is important to establish gender equality and empowerment of women, but not adding the responsibilities to their workload, because it is also very important, but also to consider men as well and working in the new perspective of the role of men in food security and nutrition of their family. Third, for a diet be accessible or affordable, it is important to consider the different areas that consider an increase of offer, fruits, pulses, and others. So in IFADA, it is working in being able to consider those forgotten species that have high nutritional value. This means that there is a better resilience in terms of climate change and to preserve biodiversity. In fourth place, we should not forget that small farmers are producing more than a third of the food that we are eating. Therefore, they have to be in the center of the transformation of these systems. It is key to consider these elements in terms of markets and others, and access the markets. For them, the role of new technologies and innovation is as important to them as others. We have to promote digital activities that calculate offer and demand or supply of products and allow these small farmers to access these services. It is important, finally, to highlight that more than investing in production, we also have to invest in all of the areas of these activities: processing, distribution, marketing, others. All of small and medium enterprises that are supporting these activities are key to ensure that food, our nutrition, have food safety and are more accessible. The numbers of this report is very important to consider that investment and the political will is more necessary than ever. It is in this effort that joint work of the international community is more important than ever. So from IFDA, we are again funding projects and programs that are taking care of the rural population, working jointly with governments and counterparts and with the producing families of the countries. And we also highlight the importance of investing in all of the areas of these activities. In the last report of IFDA, it is showing the importance of working in that intermediate sector of the value chain as a tool that becomes a key, so it will promote the activities at rural area and promoting food security. So thank you very much for your attention, and greetings from Rome. Thank you very much for your important presentation. We will continue with what we have for today. We would like to invite Ms. Lola Castro, Regional Director of the United Nations World Food Program. Good morning, all. I really hope that you're doing very well from Panama and the WFP. We would like to greet you. We want to greet all governments from the region that are here today, the colleagues of the GRULAC in Rome, the colleagues from United Nations in those countries that are participating in this presentation, the civil society, clearly, the private sector, and the communication media. And to repeat what my colleagues have mentioned, Mario and Rosana, it is clear that the region, it is going through different crises, what we are right now calling the Pole crisis, the war in Ukraine with the consequences in economy, the crisis in climate and migration, they're all being combined, and they are meaning tremendous structural inequalities that are, of course, strengthening what is happening in the region in terms of inequality. Again, this means that the multidimensional poverty and food security is making it more acute for the whole region. We saw how the pandemic meant a tremendous amount of people that lost their jobs, decreasing the family income, and also affecting, and mainly affecting, women. We know that 1 out of 2 women is out of the labor market compared to 1 out of 4 men. So this is a drop of at least 18 years in their level of participation, which is of high concern. And we also have a tremendous concern in terms of migration and what this means or implies for their countries of origin, transit countries, and destination countries, because we're losing human capital in this migration. A very fast increase of food because of Ukraine and the disruption of value chains contributed to the cost of this healthy diet that was already mentioned. And we have a region that has the most expensive healthy diet in the world, meaning that there is a prevalence of food insecurity that is very high, especially for the most vulnerable groups, the indigenous groups, rural areas, and women. And this is an acute problem because the gap between men and women in Latin America and the Caribbean is much wider than in other regions. In 2021, at global level, we had 4.3 points in the gap, and in Latin America it's 11.3 points in the percentage, and you see it's more than double folded what the world has. We know that the percentage of the population that cannot allow for the healthy diet is not only high, but there is a tremendous difference between the subregions and countries. As an example, we have countries such as Haiti, Jamaica, and Honduras, where almost half of the population cannot allow themselves a healthy diet. And as a matter of fact, we have numbers of 85, 66, and 51% for each of these countries. But we have countries such as Uruguay or Chile, where less than 4% have this issue. Therefore, there are inequalities within the region. So presenting or exposing the population to these different problems is meaning that there is a higher rate of hunger. We heard the numbers from Mario, and it is what we have heard. What can we do? We have to focus the efforts in different public policies that are holistic and are ensuring a healthy diet, which is an essential contribution that we have for food security and nutrition in the region. And one of the results have been obtained from social protection programs, key elements to prevent the impact of the clashes that exist between increase of poverty and increase of food security and nutrition. And of course, these are all fundamental aspects for any strategy to increase these elements, especially when transference is good for the population to be able to obtain a basic group that is diverse of purchases. And we know that many social protection measures have been done and through the pandemic, and we have too. In this overview that we're presenting today, we see that we have to continue, and we also have to optimize the nutritional sensitivity of these social protection programs through focalizing it better to ensure that a participation of vulnerable populations, young people and women as well, and strengthen the goals for nutrition, strategies of communication and others in the change of these populations. It is also very important, as already mentioned, to have it all together with agri-food systems that are strengthened, where we're working together with the governments of 14 countries and all of the agencies of the United Nations that are here with us today, and the policies and programs that are supporting the production of small family farmers that are connecting their production with social protection programs or local programs, which is a double impact. It increases the income of the farmers while reducing the cost of healthy products for consumers. A critical connection that we have between the agri-food systems are the school systems programs, where we work in these areas with agencies and United Nations. We are very successful. We have 85 million children in the region that are receiving food or school feeding, and it is not only improving, but it is also being more inclusive and more diverse. In many different countries from Mesoamerica, for example, we have that FAO, WFP and IFAD are working in these programs, and there are new modes being explored for traceability, purchase, and others, new areas of the market, and of course, public hiring, and the different areas that are all improving in this healthy diet. And finally, we know that similar experiences in the region, some of which have been summarized in the report that we have here today of this overview, should be helpful in promoting dialogue and integration and cooperation at international level, and to move forward in concrete or tangible areas, especially in this situation we're going through. It is key that we align the strategies and the response mechanisms at regional level, and not only to use, as we have already heard, the regional platforms as CELAC, but also the sub-regionals as CARICOM, SICA, and others. And I would like to repeat the commitment of the WFP that together with the other agents here today, we are all ready to support and continue supporting and working jointly to all countries and be able to move forward in this agenda of Hunger Zero in the region. Thank you very much, and hope you have a wonderful activity.
Muchas gracias, señora Castro, por su presentación y poner énfasis
Thank
en
you,
la
Ms. Castro, for your presentation and for addressing the global food security and nutrition context, and for addressing those living in a vulnerable situation, as well as referring to the relevance of social protection programs and school feeding programs. The overview also addresses how hunger and malnutrition affects the poorest individuals, boys, girls, adolescents, and women. To this end, I would like to request that Mr. Gary Conneal, the UNICEF Regional Director, take the floor. Good day, distinguished representatives from the press, and authorities. Now, the issues addressed under the review are not just matters affecting the present. We also address the future issues and problems that the boys and girls from the region will address. We know that affordable healthy diets are very expensive, and this has an impact on boys, girls, and adolescents, and that they are facing all types of malnutrition, and this has an impact. This violates their rights to healthy diets and enjoying the best possible welfare for a dignified life. Current malnutrition and acute malnutrition figures evidence a great deal of inequality throughout the region. And this inequality affects primarily Afro-descendants. Likewise, we have seen that there has been an increased percentage of the population that is overweight. This further exacerbates the potential for suffering from a variety of different public health diseases, such as diabetes and others. And we know that urban populations that are increasingly poor have more challenges affording healthy diets. With regard to this evidence, we truly need to start addressing nutrition during pregnancy. Women tend to be more affected by malnutrition throughout the region, and this malnutrition has an impact on their children's health as well. In order for boys and girls to grow up healthily, it's important to secure equitable distribution of foods at affordable prices. To this end, it is necessary to draw up public policies that secure access to affordable, healthy diets. Also, it's important to have qualified technicians to address malnutrition and hunger in all of its forms. And we should also provide support to mothers and support them in breastfeeding initiatives, because this is the best possible way to actually feed boys and girls and infants during the first 6 months of their lives and up until 2 years, because the nutritional contribution of mother's milk is unprecedented and also provides them with greater protection against disease. It is important to focus on the most vulnerable groups that do not have access to nutritious food. And as a result, UNESCO is focusing on overweight programs and policies and underweight programs and policies. We are also working with the parents, ensuring greater active participation. This is something that we must all do. All of us must ensure that healthy food is available and affordable for all of the families, especially the most vulnerable ones. UNICEF is willing still to work closely in a coordinated fashion with the other UN agencies and other international organizations in their support to the governments from the region, as well as the private sector, of course, without any conflicts of interest, so that together we can do away with malnutrition in all of its forms, and we can guarantee the right of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean, the young population, to grow healthily. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks, and thank you for underscoring the importance of appropriate nutrition and health for boys, girls, mothers. Now we have completed the session where we will hear from the primary remarks of the leading agencies, and now we will provide you with a video transmission of Marcos Espinal, the Deputy Director of the Pan American Health Organization. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Director of the Pan American Health Organization, it is a profound pleasure for us to be here with you today to launch the Regional Overview 2022 on food security and nutrition in Latin America and the Caribbean. This was organized in collaboration with our sister agencies and UN partners, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, the UN World Food Program, WFP, and the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Together, we are working in order to pave the way forward for healthy and sustainable food to be accessible to all individuals in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this publication, in fact, reflects a portion of this effort. As highlighted under the publication we are launching today, the cost and affordability of healthy food is a key determinant for enjoying human rights, including the right to adequate food and the right to health. Now, the rising costs and increasingly eroding affordability of healthy food in Latin America and the Caribbean, which has been actually evidenced in the publication we are launching today, are not events that are occurring by chance. Rather, they are arising from the absence of or weak policies that are incapable of effectively reshaping, strengthening, preserving food systems to promote health, equity, and sustainability. We have seen that diets are increasingly more expensive. There is increasingly more inequitable, unsustainable, unhealthy food production and supply. And all of this pushes us in the direction of the various forms of malnutrition and pushes us down toward the path, the opposite path that we should be heading down if we are to actually secure and achieve our Sustainable Development Goal 2, zero hunger, which includes all forms of malnutrition. Now, this report also refers to the different causes of the rising cost of healthy diets and also shares with the readers the policies and experiences that are required to reduce the cost of these diets. We have underscored in said publication some of the initiatives implemented in the region to boost the affordability of healthy diets. For example, policies aimed at supporting and promoting the production of healthy foods and to discourage the production and supply of unhealthy foods. Moreover, the publication refers to policies that favor the inclusion of foods produced from family farming and food malnutrition and for the diseases that take most of our lives and take years off of the quality of the individuals in the region. These diseases include cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, strokes, as well as several types of cancer. Unhealthy eating, in fact, is responsible for more deaths than any other risk factor, including smoking. Therefore, it is important to underscore the fact that the way in which unhealthy diets are affecting the population is also exacerbating inequalities. In 2021, food insecurity affected 40% of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean, and more women, in fact, were negatively affected by food insecurity than men. Overweight and obesity are on the rise in the low and middle income countries, and they are of particular concern in this region. The prevalence of overweight in children under 5 and obesity in adults are well above global averages and affect people from all income levels, both in rural and urban areas. We know that health and disease follow a social gradient. That is, the lower the socioeconomic status, the worse the health situation is. And the report that we are launching today shows that high costs and low affordability are significant barriers to accessing healthy diets in Latin America and the Caribbean. Therefore, making healthy food accessible and affordable for everyone in the region is an essential requirement for securing better health. It's quite clear that a combination of policies is required to achieve this goal. PAHO and WHO embrace the adoption of a comprehensive policy approach to accelerate the improvements in food patterns and food systems that we are beginning to see emerge, but have yet to see in our region. Now, our organization's work includes the perspective of sustainable and health-promoting food and nutrition systems capable of protecting healthy food, public health, and realizing, protecting, and respecting the right to adequate food. We will continue to provide technical cooperation to support member states in working towards the health agenda and addressing malnutrition in all of its forms, including promoting public policies for healthy food environments. PAHO will not cease its efforts to support our member states and to work with our sister UN agencies to advance on all fronts with all necessary measures, such as the regulation of ultra-processed food products that harm our diets and health, restrictions on oligopolies, and the actions related to food supply and production that harm equality, or the regulations of agri-food products and practices that negatively impact the environment, our equality and health. Now, you can count on us to restore, promote, and preserve food systems that are consistent with the enjoyment of optimal health and the well-being of families and communities, improving the quality of our lives and lengthening the lives of the people in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. With those final remarks, we have concluded the first section of this analysis on the contents of the publication. Now, I would like to begin the Q&A period with the media outlets. This will be moderated by my colleague, Pamela Rosero. Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you here today in this press conference. We are joined here today by a variety of different media outlets, and they have posted their questions, and we will begin answering their questions. The chat continues to be open for your questions. We have received the first question aimed at FAO. For FAO, what are the food security and nutrition trends for 2022 and 2023? Thank you for that, dear colleague, for the question. I would like to underscore the fact primarily that more than 100 journalists are joining us here right now, and more than 1,000 individuals are also joining us from the private sector, the academia, public sector, authorities, and we are clearly aware of the impact that this overview will have on the region, and that's why we are particularly pleased and appreciative of the presence of the media outlets. Now, we have been addressing the issue you referred to in your question for quite a while in 2022, and we have also referred to some of the figures relative to this matter during our remarks, and our colleagues from the other sister agencies in this report have also referred to some of these figures. Now, 2023 is a year chock full of uncertainty and good questions, based on the issues we have mentioned earlier, issues that are being pulled forward from the previous years, from COVID and the war, the impact of the war, and still we are fully unsure as to what the consequences of all of this will be. We know that we depend on fertilizers, and we can only simply reflect upon the potential impacts of the war in Ukraine and the Russian grain distribution capacity. We know that many of the countries in the region will be affected by that. And obviously today, we do not have all the answers. I would say that the trends are not positive, and there is a certain amount of insecurity with regard to the volume of food production in 23. And this is of great concern. If we were to our technicians have worked on some hypotheses that may be changed depending on the various changes occurring. And we have calculated that the impact of the war may, for example, bring about a 7% roughly increase of the overall number of individuals who will be joining the ranks of people facing hunger. And this is globally, and regionally it could be 400 additional, 1,000 additional. Now, there were global figures, 830 million people facing hunger, and many individuals who do not have access to food security. Now, these trends are not as optimistic as we would like to see them.
Thank you very much for your response, and we will continue with the order in which we're receiving the questions. The following question is for the IFAD. How can we insert small producers in the production of food and having access to technology advances and to the new market?
Muchas gracias por la pregunta, una pregunta muy...
Thank you for your question. It is quite a relevant question, given that new technologies allow us to bring forth new transparency to offers and price of foods in the markets, and with the use of digital platforms that can be shared in internet through mobile devices, that can mean that there will be a better selection of products and access to physical products and economic as well, and nutritional aspects. We have very interesting experiences in the uses of fintech and the digital solutions, the key digital solutions to improve access to small producers, to essential products, to access to quality foods, and to improve access to markets. Some examples of are this rural digital aspects, the e-commerce, the electronic wallets, e-commerce, and others. Thank you very much for your response. I will continue with the questions that we have been receiving. And this question is to the World Food Program. Which countries are in a food emergency in the region, and which are the specific measures that are recommended for those countries? Thank you very much. That is a very important question as well. Basically, in this report, we have data that can be expressed, have been surpassed by the current situation. And as Mario mentioned earlier, it is the crisis in Ukraine and all of the combined crises. The country that has more concern in the region is Haiti, where we have 4.7 million people, according to the last data that were published in December and done by the government, FAO, FAD, and WFP, that are in severe food insecurity. Of those 4.7 million, what is of concern is that in Haiti, we have 19,500 people that are in a catastrophe situation, in a situation that cannot access any type of food and that are losing weight. And they are going to be really in a severe bad nutrition. Other countries that we have with high numbers of people that are in food insecurity are those countries that we call or represent this dry corridor: Honduras, Guatemala, and Salvador, and Nicaragua as well. In these countries, we are quite concerned for the data that is coming. And this is also related to the crisis we have all been talking about and that report is expressing. And what can be done? There are many things that are being done. Governments are already working, as we heard before, in increasing the social protection systems, not only to include more people, but also include transference that is provided to these people. Given inflation in food, given the crisis, it is important that people have a transference adjusted to inflation, to have an access to the basic basket. So the second point is how to ensure that small producers in our region are able to sell to institutions, especially to the school feeding programs that are well extended in the region and that are a system of social protection. When doing this, we're ensuring that they have some income and at the same time the children in our region are well nurtured and that are growing properly without having any issues with obesity or malnutrition, as we heard from UNICEF. And third, to be able to just leave it in 3 lines, the creation of resilience in rural communities, not only in them, but also urban communities, and to work in a change of behavior. If we do not do this, the other crisis, climate crisis, the one that is providing droughts and hurricanes, and we're having more of these and that are affecting more people in our region. Let us not forget that we're coming out of a hurricane season with a tremendous impact in the region in places where we have never seen a hurricane. We have had hurricanes, even the ones that are going from Atlantic to the Pacific side, and it is very infrequent, clearly showing that there is a tremendous change and we have to adapt us, and that the communities and governments are working very hard in adapting to this and to create resilience to those communities so they can produce more and better, even though there is drought and the important floods that we're seeing in the region. These would be three main points, and that would be the solutions that we're working on with the regions of the different agencies that are working together and are here in this platform. Thank you very much. We want to thank you for this important response from the representative of WFP. Along the same line, where it is analyzed how to impact the lack of access to healthy diets for vulnerable people, we have the following question for UNICEF. Which are the specific consequences that a lack of access to healthy diet have in the development of children and women and pregnant women? Unfortunately, she is muted. We cannot hear your sound.
No logramos escucharte.
We are not able to hear you. We will try to solve the audio. Yes, now we can hear you. Yes, please go ahead with the response. Thank you very much, Diana, for that question. As we previously heard, on behalf of our regional director, Gary, one of the main consequences of the difficulties in accessing healthy food is mainly the fact that children do not have malnutrition. We have heard the data that all of you have mentioned. Chronic malnutrition, acute malnutrition, they are all consequences of the tremendous inequalities that exist in the region and that are affecting indigenous populations that live in rural areas, and Afro-descendants. Likewise, we can see consequences in obesity and overweight. And it is this a very important aspect, as many times there is tremendous perception that this is a problem that only affects a higher socioeconomical sector, which is not correct. Overweight and obesity are also affecting most vulnerable populations, again, because they do not have access to healthy diets, which is what they need, as has already been mentioned by all colleagues. And Gary also mentioned it, so that children can grow healthy. It is important and urgent. I think you stopped hearing me. No, we hear there's an urgency in public policies guaranteeing proper nutrition. These policies can all be focused in production, already mentioned, diversity of the diet. It can also be focused in marketing and the market, and also policies that can be focused in the consumer and related to the consumer. Very clear examples we have, which are healthy labeling, fiscal measures, social protection programs that are related to nutrition, and specifically for the first 2 years of age, it's breastfeeding up to the first 6 months on an exclusive basis, and up to 2 years of age, the promotion of complementary feeding systems. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your response. And now I will be reading a question that is related to the numbers of growth in obesity and overweight. The question is for PAHO. So how the lack of access to a healthy diet is related directly to obesity and overweight.
Adelante, Leo, por favor.
Please, Leo, you have been acknowledged.
Sí, me escuchan.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Y en realidad,
Thank you very much for the question. We are truly concerned about overweight and obesity increasing in our countries, and it is all related to a very bad feeding system. We can see
los precios altos de
that with the high prices of food,
que son menos saludables,
the ones that are less healthy have lower prices. And these, of course, are foods that just provide calories, but do not provide the needed nutrients. They are very high in fats, saturated fats, and very high in free sugars. Usually, it's more than half of the recommended dietary numbers of WHO. All of these food systems that are malfunctioning do not contribute to health. We are very concerned about this, and it is why WHO last year launched a plan to accelerate and stop obesity. And we already have 9 pioneer countries that will be supporting this acceleration process, as well as public policies as the front labeling as nutritional warnings and the policies to restrict advertising of unhealthy foods, as well as advertising for children and adults. Taxes on sugared drinks, we have seen it is very effective, as healthy food is not the nutrients that we're lacking, but rather it's what we are consuming when having access to the ultra-processed foods. And as well, there are policies for healthy environments and healthy feeding in schools, while at the same time, we need to be working with municipalities and the countries that promote physical activity and to create a proper environment for physical activity. But what is more important here is a bad feeding system that is causing this impact in terms of overweight and obesity. Thank you very much. We would like to thank WHO for PAHO, excuse me, for this response. And the next question is related to productive systems, and it is for FAO as well as for IFAD. Which is the contribution that fishing and others can have in working against hunger in the world? Well, I first would like to thank that this question probably comes from Brazil. In the report, fishing was not as highlighted as it should have been in terms of the role that it has and will have in the present time and the future. According to the data of the SOFIA Report 2022, 3.3 billion people have their feeding based on 20% of their fish really per capita. Consumption, according to statistics of our technicians, of the aquaculture products in 1961 and 2019 was of a 3% per year as in average, And throughout this very long period of time between 61 and 2019, there was a tremendous demographic growth. And if we were to create an average per capita consumption, we would today say that there was a record basis in 2019 of 20.5 kilos per capita per person. Naturally, not all of the region is approaching it in the same way. In some countries, especially for those insular countries, especially the Caribbean, the aquaculture products contribute to more than half of the protein consumption in this area. And of course, it is important to mention how fishing and agriculture are a fundamental aspect of a healthy diet, as it is providing 17% of the proteins from animal origin. There are two things that I would like to express that show us that we are going along a very positive path in this area. First is the period of time of a number of governments in the region of having a very important support of FAO to increase the production of aquaculture products. We're talking about countries that are very important, but that have no more than one number in productive growth per year. And it is the commitment of FAO that we are already carrying it out of supporting them in increasing in a forecast of 5 to 10 years in this sensitive area. And the other aspect that I would like to mention is the support that we are providing to artisanal fishing, which we have, and that we are saying that there are many thousands of artisanal fishermen. And we're not talking only about the production and growth of these fishing products, but rather connected to the struggle against poverty. If we do not support the artisanal producer to maintain an economic sustainability that will help the production of the sector and the economic sector, we will be directly condemning them to poverty. Therefore, there will be poverty and hunger in this sector. Thank you very much. We want to thank the response of FAO, and I would like to offer the floor to IFAD if they can add to this question. Yes, thank you. I will be adding to this, and I will try to avoid repeating what has already been mentioned. We really agree in everything, and this is a question, and it is very relevant for all of the Latin American region, where this is an abundant natural resource. Fishery and aquaculture are key for food security and feeding, and it is a potential area of income that is very important. Fish and fishing products, it's essential not only to reduce hunger, but also allow to ensure that there will be proper nutrition. Usually they are the most affordable protein sources, as they have lower costs as other products at animal level. In the lower income countries, the importance of fish and the byproducts is even more important because it has most of the vitamins and minerals that are necessary to cover some of the most important nutritional deficiencies. And even more, furthermore, we find some countries, member countries working in IFAD, that are always requesting support in terms of funds and technical assistance in designing public policies that will be dealing with these areas. And for us to invest in fishery and sustainable aquaculture are essential elements to be able to reduce the costs of a healthy diet, and to invest in ensuring that artisanal fishery will be sustainable and efficient, which is a tremendous challenge. And I believe these two entities, FAO and IFAD, have tremendous knowledge and an important area to be able to be supporting governments in sustainable activities. And once again, I would like to highlight that it is not only important in investing in production, as if we only consider production, we will never reach those vulnerable populations that are in need. We have to ensure that there is investment in this nutritional food be able to be stored, transferred, distributed, and marketed. These are all the middle areas that I expressed at the beginning in my presentation, which is the different parts of the value chain essential for nutritional food, especially for those that come from fishing and byproducts that are the ones that last longer. And from IFAD, we're implementing the funding projects. We call it Blue Economy, to be able to consider all these activities, and we are available for all countries that would like to work with us in those areas. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your response, and we will continue with the following question that is for the World Food Program. Which are the strategies to link migrants and to generate a capability in generating their own foods? Well, thank you very much for this question. It is quite relevant, as a matter of fact. We have a hemisphere that is always moving, a hemisphere where migration has increased tremendously ever since the borders were open after COVID. And to provide you with examples, as of September 2021 to 2022, we saw an increase of 37% in the entry between Mexico and the US, and in Colombia and Panama. In the same time, from September 21 to 2022, an increase of 73% of the entry of people that were going through these borders. Such a complicated border, which, as you know, it was the Darien block, and now it's an important route. And it is in the sense that migration in this region becomes one, or maybe the most important region in the world, with more migration processes for countries that used to receive migrants, and now they have become issuers of migrants, if you wish, reducing the human capital in a very dramatic way, from technicals and technicians and others that are leaving the country. Why? For the reasons we have already talked about, the climate crisis that is affecting them, not only in rural areas in terms of production and the capability of obtaining income, but also we have the issue of a lack of income for a basic basket, food insecurity. If people do not have a diversified basket, do not have access to social services, and they have to make radical decision-making process, which is to move maybe to an urban area and then to move to another country. So having this in mind, and to consider this question in context of what we're seeing in the region, migrants have always been supported by governments, by the World Food Program, other agencies like the ACNUR and IOM, and throughout transit of their countries, as we call them, the walkers, as they go from one country to another. Another type of care is when they are established in a certain country, the very first time they're supported with basic food, maybe transference or others, so that they can access a basic diet. But that is not sustainable, of course. And we're talking about migrants that are in the urban areas. When they are settled in urban areas, which is very difficult, and this response to the question is that they cannot produce their own food because there's no space, no land. And many times we're limited even to their area where they're living. I have visited areas where we have 8 or 9 people living in one room, 2 to 3 square meters, without water, without too many possibilities. And having this in mind, it is very important that as a solution, governments continue doing as what Colombia has been doing to integrate migrants in the social transference projects, and to integrate them in training them to be able to obtain some income, their own income, so that they can have access to the basic basket that will provide them with nutrition and the proper diet.
Agradecemos la respuesta.
We would like to thank the World Food Program for replying. We have also received a question related to the school feeding programs. This is a question for UNICEF. How can one innovate under the school feeding program to ensure that you will foster food security with equality, inclusion, and under a gender perspective. Thank you for that, Diana. I think the question, saying that the question was for UNICEF was a mistake because the World Food Program, in fact, is in charge of the school feeding program. So I will redirect that question to the World Food Program. Thank you. Let us invite the WFP to reply to the question. Thank you. This is a very important question. The World Food Program, FAO, the IFAD, the Ministries of Education, Trade, Agriculture, we all work together to ensure that school feeding programs launched throughout Latin America and the Caribbean will reach all the children in the far-flung areas throughout our region, but we also ensure that there will be more local purchasing programs, that everything is more localized and focused, and that the products are purchased locally. And with regard to gender equality, that we include female farmers, that they're located right by. This also provides them with access to signing contracts to ensure that their products are able to be sold even in small quantities, but reach the schools themselves. So together, with all of the efforts, we will make sure that school feeding, that the programs include foods that are not processed, but foods that are healthy, diversified, and to the extent possible, purchased as locally as possible so that we can provide access to the millions of students throughout the region that really depend on these programs. And if we are to continue working closely together with the governments, we will be able to boost these programs. Thank you. I just wanted to add that it is important to, under the school feeding programs, to limit access to ultra-processed foods and to foster access, or rather consumption of water. We've actually seen that at these schools, there's a great deal of access to sugary beverages. So it's very important to secure that, to ensure that water is fostered as a viable beverage. Thank you for those comments and for answering this question. It's such an important issue for the region. We are about to close this press conference, and we would like to thank all of the individuals who joined us here today. We have tried to answer all the questions posed by the press. Now, I would like to just repeat that the 5 UN agency communications teams will be available to answer your questions, ones that have not been answered, and or to provide you additional information. Once again, we would like to thank all of the individuals participating here today, the government authorities, and the more than 100 journalists who have joined us today from the various Latin American and Caribbean nations. We would like to invite you to peruse the report, which will be available on FAO America's website and the websites of the other UN agencies. Please be sure to take a look at this to focus on the key data. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you soon. Until the next time.